settled in 2012 financially, we had a miscarriage, 18 weeks, DNC at the hospital, completely unexpected. And, that was a pivotal defining moment in my faith.
This is the Elevation Room, a space where we unpack life's hardest moments and the impact that they have on our faith, family, and fulfillment. I'm your host, Dustin Lale, and each episode we share real stories of resilience and breakthrough to inspire you to keep moving forward, rooted in your purpose, living on purpose, and walking with purpose. This journey we call life is not meant to be done alone. So click subscribe or the follow button now, settle in, and join us as we go into the Elevation Room. In today's episode, I had the privilege of sitting with Kirt Boudreau, who's a husband, a father, a serial entrepreneur. We talk about how at the age of 14, he started his first business that he ran for 9 years, all the way through graduating college with a chemical engineering degree to getting married. And it wasn't until he and his wife got pregnant with their first child that he, in his words, was too scared to continue forward, and they decided to sell the business. But then he and his wife faced a family tragedy that I can't wait for you to hear the lessons that they learned through that very difficult season on how God is a restorative God. And I know that it will bless you and that you will be able to pull some things for the difficult seasons in your life through this conversation. I hope you enjoy. And with that, to the Elevation Room. Welcome back to the Elevation Room. Today, I have with me Kirt Boudreau. How are you, man?
I'm doing great.
I'd love for you to introduce yourself to the audience so we can kind of get your bio real quick,
Sure.
if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, so Kirt Boudreau, I am the husband of Wendy and the father of Hunter, Annalise, and Charlie. Charlie is Charlotte, but we call her Charlie.
Okay.
Yep. And Hunter's in college, and my girls are 15 and 10.
Okay.
And my wife and I have been married for 23 years.
Congratulations.
22 years. 22 years.
22 years. Okay.
I'm a small business owner. I lead a group of Christian executives. And I've been an entrepreneur several times and been an engineer for a while. And so have had several journeys in the marketplace.
Well, I can't wait to hear more about him. And Hunter, if I'm correct, he went swimming nationals. Is that right?
Yeah. So he swims for William Carey University.
Okay.
He swam for COLA, City of Lafayette Aquatics here in town, and got recruited to William Carey University. He was a breaststroker for them and finished 8th in the NAIA Nationals tournament, first team All-American.
Oh, congrats.
As a freshman, and is currently training at COLA to swim this summer and see if he can get a Olympic qualifying time for 2028.
Okay, so many years planning ahead.
It's a few years, but he can't technically qualify yet, but once you know you've gotten there, you know you can get back. So. Okay.
Well, that's exciting. Are the girls into swimming at all, or is it just...
No, they like 4-H.
Okay.
And my oldest likes 4-H, and they both dance for ACA, Acadiana Christian.
Okay. What's their favorite discipline within dance?
My youngest daughter, Charlie, likes jazz.
Okay.
She's very kind of spunky.
Nice.
And my older daughter is tall and thin, and she likes, she does point, and she likes ballet and lyrical.
Okay, cool. My wife was a principal ballerina at LPT, Lafayette Ballet Theater. So our oldest, who's 6, she had her first little showcase over there last week. So we're getting back into that world on the dance side of things.
Very good.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that with me. I'd love to, for me and for the audience, if you could kind of help us understand. You said you've been an entrepreneur several times. You've been married for 22 years.
Yeah.
Help us understand the journey at a high level that you've been on. And then after that, I'd love to settle in on, some of the challenging seasons that you've shared with me as well.
Yeah. So I started my first business when I was 14, officially. Cutting grass.
Nice.
I couldn't drive yet.
There you go.
I lived out in the country. Somebody brought me to the few yards that I had, and at 15, I was on the road, and back then you could do that, and picked up a few more yards. And so did that for the next 8 years or so. And after I got married, continued that after college, got an engineering degree, and just didn't know enough about entrepreneurship, got scared, baby on the way, and pulled the plug, sold it, and went to work as an engineer. Did that for about 15 years. And actually the Lord called me back to the business entrepreneur world, and now I'm running a small business like that for coaching C12, coaching other business owners in a group called C12.
That's awesome. So I'd love to know a little bit more when you say, hey, got my engineering degree, started the small business, got scared, sold it because we had a baby on the way.
Yeah.
What was the business? What were you into? What was that journey to make that decision to sell? What did that look like?
Yeah. So, I started the business to make money that was not working a 9 to 5, working at, all my friends were working at McDonald's or a restaurant, whatever. And so I was like, I can make more money doing things myself, which I did. And at that time, I didn't know what I was going to go into, and then went into chemical engineering. And about probably 2 years into that, I realized, okay, this is going to be a different path. And but kept doing the lawn care stuff. And by the time I graduated, my options were primarily to leave Lafayette, go to New Orleans or Houston or somewhere else, or to go work offshore. And my wife was like, "That's not happening.
Yeah,
no 7 and 7, no 14 and
I
14."
hear you. How old were, or when did y'all get married? At what point in your journey were y'all married?
Yeah, so we got married my senior year in college.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
And she had graduated in December. She's a year, 8 months older.
Okay,
so she had graduated in December. I graduated in May. We got married in April,
okay.
So about 3 weeks before graduation.
Okay, and so y'all were married, and you were doing the lawn care thing.
Yeah, and I had a business partner, best friend from high school. He actually went to get his master's in taxation in Denver.
Okay,
and so he moved to Denver for a year, and I bought him out.
Okay,
and he hasn't come back. But I ran that business myself for the next couple of years, and until we decided to get pregnant. And so we had a baby on the way, and that just changed things. Just got scared, honestly.
Yeah. What, I mean, what scared you? Was it, hey, I don't know if I can sustain this? Or
Yeah. So, well, we were both working up to that point.
Okay.
And we had made a decision, I don't know, before we got married or after we got married, that she was going to stay home with the kids.
Okay.
And so going from, 2 incomes to 1 income was going to make things tight. And I just didn't have enough faith to keep going.
Okay.
And so, I look back on it, and I just didn't have the faith to keep going.
Yeah.
And we would have made it, looking back at things, we would have made it, but I couldn't see it. And so I ended up selling my business and hiring on at AGI Industries right before, like the week before Katrina hit.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then, of course, Rita hit right after that. And so, I called the guy that hired me, and I'm like, do I still have a job? And he's like, we'll have more work because of these storms than, we've had in a long time. Yeah, you're still hired. So
yeah. What was that conversation like with your wife, making that decision?
She was okay with it.
Yeah.
I mean, I was always a workaholic. So, working for yourself as a business owner, there were nights that I'd get home well after dark. Cell phone use back then was not the same, so sometimes she didn't know when I was getting home. And, if I got a job and I was supposed to be home, I would take it. And so she was happy for the consistency of a quote unquote 9 to 5, but I would still work late, and I didn't know how to not overwork back then.
Yeah. And then, so from there you started working at AGI, you said.
Yeah.
Was that a peachy journey? Did you enjoy every moment of it? And why I ask is, whenever I graduated from LSU with industrial engineering. I went to Houston, and great job, all of that. But the cubicle life, I was struggling with big time.
Yeah.
It was not enjoyable at all. It helped
Yeah.
once I got a promotion into the management side of things. When I was in office, kind of controlled a little bit more of the dynamics. But
Yeah.
those first 3 years were very trying for me to go to a cubicle, be watched like a hawk, monitored every second I was there, kind of thing. Is
Yeah.
in a, hey, you left 10 minutes early. Wait, but I came an hour early, to work because I had something to do. It was just a difficult time.
Yeah. Micromanagement.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I didn't have that experience. When I sold my business, it had been 9 years.
Okay.
It felt like selling a baby.
Oh, wow.
Like it was something I built, I birthed and nurtured and thought I would do it forever. And then got to a point where I sold it. And so that was really hard. I mean, I got severely depressed.
Really?
Yeah. And my son was born 3 months later.
Okay.
And so for the first probably year of his life, it was pretty, pretty blank.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So how did you, with your wife, how did y'all navigate that together?
She's awesome.
Yeah.
She's very gracious. She loved me well. And of course, 6 months in, 9 months in, I started to kind of get a hang of things at work and, of course, poured myself into work to not deal with the emotions and the feelings and things like that. And I said a year, 6 months, 9 months, a year, things started to get better. I had a little more flexibility to be in and out of the office. I think the biggest shift was being in an office after having been on the road, in yards, outdoors, my whole working life.
Yeah.
To now being in an office for 7 out of the 8 hours of a day. That was probably the biggest transition, but
I would think
it wasn't hot. There was an air conditioner, so that was good.
It's a positive for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, I really began to get a feel for that kind of work. I was a project manager, applications engineer, and for the first year, it was tough, kind of integrating into that new world. Years 2 and 3 were pretty solid, and then I started feeling that urge to get out again.
Gotcha.
And so about a year of that, kind of feeling that urge, I got offered a sales position in Lake Charles, and so I spent the next 13 years in Lake Charles.
13.
Yeah.
Okay. So did y'all move, or was it just you commuting back and forth, or?
No, we didn't move. So got a company truck, drove back and forth.
Okay.
Became regional manager a few years later. Had responsibility for the territory. Again, workaholic. Get home at 8, leave at 6 in the morning.
Yeah.
I remember I delivered a pump to a first-time customer who ultimately only bought with us that one time on Valentine's Day. Instead of going to canceled our dinner, took my wife to Lake Charles to deliver this $2,500 pump. Like I was crazy.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't stop.
Yeah. Yeah. How
Horrible work-life balance.
did you know the Lord at that time, or?
Yeah, I did. But I was building my kingdom.
Yeah.
That was probably 2010, 2011. Wasn't quite making enough money at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And just couldn't turn it off.
Gotcha.
And I was serving as a deacon at our church at that point, but it was all about work. Everything was about work, and everything else came. And I think I would say God came second to that as well.
Gotcha.
So
yeah, what I know from that point, you said y'all had a difficult season as a family.
Yeah.
When y'all experienced a heartbreak, a tragedy.
Yeah.
Would you mind sharing a little bit about
Sure.
that?
We finally got to a point where we were making more than we needed to survive.
Mm-hmm.
we were finally hitting some numbers that we knew we could hit from a sales perspective. And just as things got settled in 2012 financially,
Right.
we had a miscarriage.
Mm.
18 weeks,
Wow.
DNC at the hospital, completely unexpected. And, that was a really that was a pivotal defining moment in my faith. I remember being in the doctor's office after the ultrasound, no heartbeat, and we were completely in tears. And we actually went out the back door of the clinic because we were a mess, and went to the car. And I prayed and thanked God for the life and said, you're going to use this somehow. And I don't know exactly where that came from, but there was nothing else I could do. There was there was nothing else I could do. And it was really hard to watch my wife suffer through the stages of grief over the next year or so until we got pregnant again. And even then, is it going to happen again? Was always kind of floating in the back of our minds until we had Charlie. And she came out screaming. And
made herself known.
Yeah,
early,
for
right?
sure. But yeah, that was probably the darkest season of our lives. And it was short for me because I'm a problem solver. I like to fix things. I like to solve problems. And that was not a problem I could solve. There was nothing I could say. There was nothing I could do that would have made her feel better.
Yeah.
Now I realize now I probably could have sat with her and just held her. I didn't know how to do that.
Yeah.
And probably didn't want to do that. And so what did I do? Just went straight back to work and really poured myself into work. And it wasn't until I met a guy who ultimately became a mentor for me that really challenged me, challenged a lot of things I was saying and doing. And that was when the Lord really started working on my heart. And over the next several years of meeting with him pretty consistently, reading some new books, listening to some new pastors, and really diving into what Scripture actually said, and not just kind of believing the basics.
Right.
And that was when my spiritual growth really took off. Is after that death.
Well, within that year, that was challenging. You said the darkest moment that we've had. I mean, what were some of those moments together? And I know that there's someone close to us, to Bethany and I, that they experienced this, and the husband went to work, would cry in the bathrooms, but at home he would, in his mind, I'm being strong for my wife, and then she felt, hey, I'm not being felt, I'm not being heard, and it caused a divide, a pretty serious rift.
Yeah.
Thankfully, God worked it all out, and it's all good. But that was for them also a very difficult season, handled how they knew how. Also,
I didn't know how to deal with emotions, and obviously it was traumatic, but I sealed off every bit of emotions that I had and said, basically, I'm not going there.
Yeah.
And after probably 6 or 8 months of meeting with this mentor, a lot of things really began to change. And what happened is my wife stayed stuck in the grief. And, I was just quoting Bible verses and really, really excited about the growth that was happening in my life. And she could see it, but she was in too much pain to, so we drifted apart because of that. And I wasn't patient. I wasn't willing to sit with her and let God move her along. And it took some time to recover from that distance.
Yeah.
It got better once we had our third child here. And it took another few years before we could really share about it it was my wife would just start crying randomly in church or the grocery store or in the car, or
Yeah.
it didn't,
Yeah.
for several years.
Mm.
And of course, I didn't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Looking back on that season, what you think God was doing in you, in y'all's relationship, obviously, how did you grow through that in order to get to a place where you can say now, hey, we're able to talk about it, we're able to walk through it
yeah.
together and have those conversations?
Yeah, it probably took 5 years before we could really talk about it with people. And we did, so I think 6 years in, 5 or 6 years in, we were leading our marriage ministry. We still do. And over at church, and we did a marriage retreat. And we were one of the speakers, and I don't remember all of the different topics, but it was heavy topics,
Okay.
all of them.
Of course.
And we were one of the speakers, and basically shared our testimony of kind of walking through that season. And there were a lot of tears delivering that that message. But after that, it was a lot easier to talk about it.
So it almost forced a testimony, a confession of what was going on, what happened over the past years, which brought some freedom, it sounds like.
Yeah, it did for sure.
Well, that's a blessing.
Absolutely. And so Wendy specifically has been able to walk with some women that have gone through similar things from a place of healing.
Yeah.
But it took a while.
Yeah. What would you say, where you are now, looking at that, and as y'all are walking through other couples, in that some of the key lessons that y'all have gleaned from that God showed y'all that y'all can impart and do impart, like in Wendy's case, when she's helping people through that season of how to navigate those difficult seasons?
Yeah. Yeah, I think the biggest thing is God is a restorative God. And he will restore the pain.
Amen.
And we've seen that. We've seen that in people that we've been able to serve, and people that we've been able to comfort in their loss, because we've been there, and just learning to trust God has been a theme of our entire lives, entire marriage. And that was a season where we just had to trust God with the loss, that he was going to do something with it. In 2012, so that was June of 2012. In November of 2012, I went to Africa on a mission trip, repaired some water wells. And really, that was the week that our son, Bob, we called him Bob, baby on board, that Bob would have been born.
Gotcha.
And so I went ahead and took that week. She was good with it, and went to Africa. And that was probably the time that I healed from it. I was able to get away from work. I didn't have the distraction of work.
Yeah.
I had to deal with some of the emotions. And that was very healing for me.
Yeah, praise God. Getting away, separate, new environment on your own, in a place I'm sure there wasn't TV or all these other distractions to pull you away. You kind of had to, I'm sure, face some of the tough things and walk through that.
For sure. And, if I could go back to that season again, I would have sat with my wife on the couch or in bed or wherever she was and just held her. Like that would have made such an impact on her. And I didn't know how valuable that would be to her.
Yeah. Is her love language quality time?
Quality time.
Is that okay? Yeah. Then that makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
And, she wasn't mean about it, but I didn't know. And I didn't know how to rest. And so because I was always working, I couldn't just sit by her and not think about work, and then something would come up and I'd leave and go do
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Like I just didn't know how to rest,
Hmm.
and I needed to learn how to just be.
Yeah. Well, so I know for me, sometimes being on this, what I call a hamster wheel, if you will, of even if I'm sitting, like, oh, I could be doing this, I could be
Yeah,
doing that, or I really should be doing this,
yeah,
and really learning to just enjoy the moments and try and be as present as possible. You know, our kids are 6'4" and going to be 2. They grow up fast, as I'm sure
they
you can
do.
attest to very well. And trying to just sit in those moments, and pour into them when we
Yeah.
can without neglecting anything, but knowing that they are the priority. But it's easier to say. It's very easy to say. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to put into
Yeah.
practice.
What do they say? Hindsight's 2020.
Yeah, that's right.
So what's neat about the season I'm in now, growing another small business, is that I'm able to take the time for Wendy and the kids
Yeah.
and invest in them differently than I did when they were younger.
Yeah. So might be a good time to talk about that transition. What brought you to, hey, out of chemical engineering, the job I'm in,
Yeah,
into taking this leap of faith to start another business?
sure. Yeah, as I said, I was growing in my faith. I began to realize that um, there was, of course, back then I was very much a doer,
Hmm.
and everything that I thought about was doing,
Yeah.
and I really didn't know how to be.
Hmm.
And so I knew that God was calling me to something. Like I knew there was more. I could see things differently from just the new perspectives. And I didn't know what that was. And so I started looking at, do I go to seminary? Do I go work for a nonprofit? Like that was all I knew. But at the same time, I started looking for potential other jobs and just knew something needed to change after we had pretty much healed from that loss, and we had our other baby, and things were good again. And I knew that something needed to change. There was some baggage in my life. There was some ruts I had created that I didn't know how to get out of. Primarily the workaholic
Okay.
stuff. And I just couldn't find a way out. Like nothing seemed to be a good alternate.
Mm.
And I had pretty much given up. And then a manufacturer came to me that we represented, and I ended up going work for them. And I was working for them when COVID happened.
Okay.
And long story short, a year and a half into that job, I got laid off. But it was 4 minutes after I had sent my resume and application to C12.
Okay.
And that was a journey of about 6 or 8 months. But both of those things kind of culminated at that same time in November of 20. And it was very clear that God was doing something. In the quiet of 2020, where we couldn't travel to go to work, there was lots of things we couldn't do. There was a lot of opportunity to just be.
Yeah.
And in the quiet of that, I began to hear God calling me to something else, and things finally started to become clear.
Yeah.
And we actually had plans to do C12 maybe in a couple of years. We had talked to them, and we were kind of starting the journey.
Like when you submitted the application?
Yeah, like that was based on us starting in a year or two.
Gotcha. Okay.
And after I hit send, I went to the restroom, came back to my computer, logged on to a meeting, and got laid off.
Can't make that up, can
And like I had to go back later
Yeah.
and look at look at timestamps to know like when did I send this message versus that, when that happened.
Yeah.
And so that's why I know it was 4 minutes. But
What was going through your mind when you're sitting on this meeting and they say, "Hey, Kirt, sorry,
yeah,
we got to let you go"? What was your initial reaction?
I knew it's crazy. God protected me in that season
Mm.
because I'm an Enneagram 3. I don't know if you know Enneagram
No, not
stuff.
too. I mean, I know of it, but I'm not definitely not.
So the achiever,
Okay.
high achievement, high shame.
Okay.
And based on my design, the way I'm wired, I should have been a mess.
Mm.
I'd never gotten laid off before, prided myself in my work, and none of those emotions came.
Wow.
It was the only thing I thought was like, okay, God, what are you up to? And so I immediately started getting, literally within hours, started getting phone calls from former clients saying, hey, I heard you lost your job. Where do you want to go work? Because we want you to still support us. And so I said, just give me some time, and went home and told my wife, not in the best way, kind of. I told her, I said, good news and bad news. And she said, okay. I said, let me give you the good news first. I got my bonus. And she was like, oh, that's awesome. I said, in the form of a severance check. She's like, what?
What?
And just really, it was like finding out that, the suddenness of it was like finding out that, the baby didn't have a heartbeat.
Mm.
And so she kind of spiraled over the next few weeks.
Okay.
Yeah. I could have handled it a lot better.
What was the cause of the spiral, if you will? Was it, I know you said the suddenness, but was it for her, like, what are we going to do with the finances, or what does this mean for the family with the kids? Like, what did that?
Yeah, I think just the unknown, the uncertainty. We were still in COVID, fall of 20. And I was super confident. It was like, okay, God, I don't know for sure this is the path.
Yeah.
But God's doing something. It was very, very clear that that's what was happening. And so God really protected me over the next few months.
I know we talked earlier about, faith and the definition. In that moment, that seems to encapsulate, the evidence of this thing that's not seen. Like, I don't know what's happening, but I do see these other things over here happening.
Right.
And I've got this hope, and that's faith, right?
Yeah.
The substance of things hoped for, and the evidence sounds like in that moment, you were filled with faith.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And it took a while for Wendy to come along, but it was about a 4-month process, and she was on board. C12 wouldn't have even allowed me to do this without her being on board.
Good for them.
Yeah. And so it was about a 3-month discernment process.
Yeah.
And so we said yes and started that path, and we thought it was going to be, everything else in my life was up and to the right. There were certainly things that I didn't do well, but most of the things I didn't do well, I quit.
Yeah.
Up to that point.
Right.
And so
that way you didn't have to long suffer with it.
That's right.
Hey, it's not working. Moving on.
This is not going to be a win. I'm out.
Yeah, I hear you.
And so we and that was kind of the case. That was really what was happening with the lawn care thing.
Yeah, okay.
It was kind of like, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm out. I quit. I don't know how to love my wife well in this season. I'm out. I quit. Mm-hmm. And so I think that was something God wanted to work out of me. I went in to C12, this new entrepreneurial journey, with a lot of hope, a lot of perceived faith, and I learned that I had a lot to learn about trusting God, and I had a lot to learn about not quitting and pressing on and persevering, and that's what the last 4 years have been.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so for those who don't know, you mind sharing like a high level what C12 is,
Yeah.
kind of what you're building, what that looks like?
Sure. Yeah, so it's a business group for Christian leaders. Imagine having a board of directors for your business that you meet with once a month and get insight from them. And so that's the gist of it. The idea is you get help from other business owners, like-minded business owners. That makes the business challenges less difficult, easier to solve, easier to walk through tough business challenges because you have peers in your corner. And ultimately, the desire is that you would see your business as a ministry, see your business the way God does. And so we equip business leaders to build great businesses for a greater purpose. And I lead that charge here in South Louisiana.
Nice. And so, have you seen thus far with 4 years? I know it's taken 4 years to get to where you are, continuing to grow and expand. Have you seen the fruit, within the individual members that you had hoped for?
Yeah.
Which, is it all that you thought it would be? Is it less, more? Is it different?
In some cases it's less, in some cases it's more, in some cases it's different.
Okay.
But to answer the question, like, when one of the things we do is we interview spouses and key leaders in the business owner's organization to have a 360 view of their leadership. And when a spouse comes in and says that, my husband is a better father since he's been in this group, their business is paying money for them to be in that group, but, and their business is getting better, their leadership's getting better, but for them to say, yeah, he's a better husband. Like, he gets home on time. Like he spends time with the kids now,
Right.
That's some pretty significant fruit of what's happening. Some of the businesses are growing like crazy. Some of the businesses are enduring tough markets. And so it's a benefit to be in the room when you're going through a tough season or when you're going through a really significant growth season.
Right.
Because both are difficult.
Yep. Both have their challenges.
Both have their challenges.
That's right. What would you say from your role as, facilitating the group, bringing the people into the same room, kind of, I'll say, matching personalities more or less.
Yeah.
What have you learned the most, or what have you gleaned from being in the same room with these guys and gals? Is it guys and girls?
It can be, yeah.
Okay.
I don't have any female members yet, although we have one in the waiting.
Nice.
I think the thing that is common between all of them, whether it's $100 million a year business or a $1 million a year business, is it's never easy. Like I think there's this belief that, you become an entrepreneur and you'll make more money. You'll get to a point where, you can not work. Your business just runs on its own. And that's a fallacy.
You mean all the Instagram influencers are not telling the truth?
There's a lot of work to make things happen. And social media will make you believe that there's not a lot of work behind it.
It's just a highlight reel most of the time.
And so, this person has a nice house, or, they moved to a new building, or they're driving a better car or whatever. But nobody really knows the day-to-day challenges that they face, and the weight of making payroll, and the weight of making sure that their people are cared for. When you're a good business leader, you care about the people that work for you.
Yeah.
And when things happen in their lives, and sometimes you can't fix it, it's heavy.
Yeah.
And so what I've learned is that the life of an entrepreneur is just difficult. It's not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. And I've watched these guys encourage each other. I've watched some of them go from the brink of bankruptcy to flourishing again.
Wow.
Because of the peers in the room saying, you can't quit, don't give up, keep going. And it's really fruitful.
And do you think that having those conversations, being in the room, have helped you keep going in C12? You talked about that being one of the lessons you feel like I was teaching you through this moment of not just quitting when it's not up and to the right. And easy as I think it should be. Not as easy, but not the expectation that was set before you. Do you think being in the room helped with that?
Yeah, I don't think I would have made it to this point without them and without my peers in C12.
Yeah.
And my wife, but the group, I've shared some of my biggest challenges with them.
Yeah.
And they've encouraged me not to give up, not to quit, not to give up on God's call. And we've had really significant growth. We were at 8 members in October, and we're at 13, and we've got kind of 2 in waiting.
Yeah. Because it's only 12 in a room, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got 13 right now. So we're preparing for a second forum.
Yeah. That's exciting. Bring new growth and see what God does with that.
Absolutely.
Your schedule will get busier, but you're used to
okay.
that, it sounds like.
Yeah.
You're used to that. Well, that's exciting. I know that you're also an investor in some things. What's next for you? Is C12 kind of what you see? You're kind of planting your flag in for now, or, kind of eyeing a next step or anything like that?
No, I mean, this is my main gig. C12 is my main gig. I asked God at times in the last 4 years when things were really tough, God, would you release me? Is this really what you called me to do?
Yeah.
I thought this would be even more up and to the right because, I'm working for you now.
That's right. Look, I got laid off right after I sent in my application.
Yeah, and that was like one of a dozen things that happened that just made it like very, very clear that this was God's path.
Yeah.
And of course, all of those things made me think, oh, well, this is not going to be easy, but this is going to happen faster than I thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it didn't. And I had to learn a lot, and I had to really dig deep and really trust God and really cry out to him, and at times say, I don't know if I trust you right now. And then he would do something else, and it would be enough for me to keep going. And just really, in some cases, some really random things that would happen, ways that I would connect with people. And, I've had this flyer on my wall that you dropped off 3 years ago. Now I'm ready, like out of the blue.
Yeah.
So just learning to trust God in more areas of life, when everything is working out and life is pretty comfortable, it feels pretty easy to trust God.
Right.
When when you sell your business baby and you have a miscarriage and you start a new business that no one knows about, it's a time when you really have to learn to trust God.
Yeah, I hear you. That's a part of the journey. My favorite scripture is Proverbs 3, verse 5, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. As engineering mind, you can relate to that, I'm sure. And then verse 6 says, acknowledge him in all your ways, and he'll direct your steps or make your path straight. And it's so easy to say, so easy to read, sounds amazing.
Right.
But in those moments where it's difficult, when the path doesn't look straight, you don't know what the path looks like other than falling off of a cliff, it's a little tough. But he's a big God.
Yeah.
I found. We could bring, I love that you said, hey, I come to moments where I'm like, God, I don't even know if I trust you. That's raw. That's authentic. You see it all throughout the Psalms. You see it all through David numerous times. Oh, I'm worried about this, or I'm fearful of this. Oh, God, what about this? Then you'd always bring it back to worship. But you are so, so I appreciate you sharing that for sure. With that, I'll move on to the ABCs of the Elevation Room, where we ask all the guests the same 3 questions. A being advice that you would give to your younger self, knowing what you know now, the journey you've been on, the lessons you've learned. What would be the 1 or 2 things that you would speak over into your younger self?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing would be to learn to be. Learn to rest, learn to be present. If I could have done that, things with all of the difficult seasons would have been better. especially loving my family well. I would have done that better if I could have just been with them.
That's good.
Not worked for them, not, not driven them to succeed, but just to be with them.
Isn't it easy for us to say, hey, I'm doing this for my family, rather than just being with the family? Yep. That's something that I have to try and remind myself regularly as well. So I get that. B is books that have made the greatest impact in your life.
Yeah. Good to Great.
Okay.
Was a really good one. Along the way, The Sovereignty of God by Arthur W. Pink was a really significant one on the faith journey. Crazy Love by Francis Chan.
Yeah.
Really anything by Francis Chan.
Yeah, he's a great author.
On the business side, one of the most impactful books was called Sacred Pace by Terry Looper.
Okay. Pace, P-A-C-E?
P-A-C-E,
okay.
Sacred Pace.
I hadn't heard of that one.
By Terry Looper. And it really just helps you get to neutral with a decision and not make decisions based on what you want, but just trust that you get to a place where if it's this outcome or this outcome, as long as it's what God wants, I'll do it.
Okay.
And so that was a really impactful one. Gosh, I've read so many books. The Sacredness of Secular Work.
Sacredness of Secular Work.
Yeah, really, really powerful one. Jordan Rayner.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I want to create a book list. That way, all the books that are recommended, people can access, can have a reference point for them. So I'll make sure to add those to it. C is cherished family traditions, whether it's, ones you look back upon, ones you've built or are building with your family. I'd love to hear those.
Yeah. I think two things come to mind. At my mom's for Christmas, we all get stockings of candy.
Okay.
And we all sit down kind of on the living room floor and take our stocking and pour them out. And then we bargain with each other until we get the things that we want. And so it's a pretty significant frenzy.
That sounds
trying
so
to trying to get rid of the things you don't want for the best things someone else has before someone else gets it. Right.
It sounds like a real life game of Catan. I don't know if you've played the Settlers of Catan, bartering.
That's right.
This. No, I want that. That is hilarious.
Yeah.
Have y'all done any with your family that
Yeah, we don't do traditions like that. What I would say, we've done some every year. We do a different Christmas pajama set.
Okay, yeah.
But I think the thing that has been what I would consider to be tradition is we have encouraged our kids to serve, and they have just watched us serve in different ways. And so that's maybe not a traditional tradition, but it's kind of a family principle. I wouldn't say it's a family rule. We don't force it.
Yeah.
But, if you're part of our family, you're going to serve in some way. And so Charlie's serving in the nursery, and Annalise does some of that. She babysits, and Hunter plays in the worship band, and we lead our marriage ministry. I serve as an elder. Wendy serves some young moms. So we're like, that is probably the most important thing to us as a family.
Yeah.
And we don't talk about it a lot. We just do it. And I think they have watched, and it's like, well, this is just what you do.
Yeah. This is who we are.
It's who we are. And that's really good. And that's awesome. Probably the thing I'm most proud of with my kids.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. I've enjoyed our little conversation here, and the bits that you've shared. I appreciate that. Where can anyone watching or listening, best way to contact you or reach out if they want to get in touch?
Sure. I've got a C12 South Louisiana page. I've got a LinkedIn page for C12 South Louisiana and my name. Those are probably the easiest ways to get in touch with me.
Okay.
So
Facebook.
LinkedIn.
C12 and
Yeah.
LinkedIn C12. Got it.
Or look me up, Kirt Boudreau, on either of those platforms.
Cool. Well, I've enjoyed it. I appreciate it. And that's it from the Elevation Room. So I appreciate y'all being on this journey with us. Remember, no matter what you're going through, to keep moving forward, rooted in purpose, living on purpose, and walking with purpose.